We've done a few of these episodes already. Today we're going to be covering the last of the mechs, so let's go over which implants work best for support mechs. So starting off with MD, your options are cooldown, duration, radius, and heal speed. Now, obviously this is an uncommon mech, but it's also the only healer that we have. So let's say you're pulling a Sanji and you decide, I want to use, an MD late game or something like that. But generally speaking, you are looking at two numbers here in terms of maximizing the amount of heal you get. You can either increase 10 to 13 with ability duration of 30%, or you can get the cooldown to like 9.5, something like that. So you can optimize the amount of total heal per minute if you reduce the cooldown rather than increasing the duration. However, those both pale in comparison to the heal speed implant, which gives an additional 50% heal speed, which is quite a bit. Definitely the most valuable MD implant, and the one that actually makes it sort of useful late game. Radius I wouldn't really worry about because I believe you're getting 23%, so it's basically the difference between 10 meter radius and 12 meter radius, which is, there's basically no difference. You're gonna be right in there. You're gonna be right in your teammates' faces anyway. All right, moving over to Arachnos. Your options are just the classics: cooldown, duration, and damage. Now, Arachnos does have a mech-specific damage implant, but that's, kind of classic of most mechs. The cooldown is the only one that I would bother going with. Turret damage in general is sad at best, and the the duration is actually capped, because even though you can get your duration to 13 seconds, your turret will still deactivate after 10 seconds of firing, because it has 100 shots and the turret's fire rate is 10 shots per second, meaning that it will just run out of ammo and it'll despawn. So the duration does basically nothing. Cooldown, this is the longest cooldown in the game if I'm not mistaken, so it's worth trying to cut it down at least a little bit if Arachnos is something that you really want to use for whatever reason. Cheetah, your options are cooldown, damage, and mine radius. Now, you could get the radius to like 15 meters, I think, with the implant, but even though most radius implants are actually really, really nice to have, I'd say Cheetah is one of the few exceptions. And the reason is that anything that can get away from a 12-meter radius mine quick enough probably can get away from something with 15, even 20-meter radius mines quick enough. And this is mostly by like dash mechs dashing over them, right? It's an easy way to escape a cheetah mine just by dashing over it. Most of the time, anything else, if you activate it and it explodes, it's gonna hurt you no matter what, pretty much. It is also the rare exception of having one of the shortest cooldowns in the game, meaning that ability cooldown implant is really also not worth using. So all in all, ability damage is your best shot. Cheetah is indisputably the mech with the highest ability damage out of every mech in the game. It's just that the rest of the mech is kind of crap, and so nobody uses it. And also the fact that the mines are entirely impractical from like an actual match perspective. But increasing that damage can actually, help your performance quite a bit if you're going for like Cheetah Gang. Next up is Zephyr. Your options are cooldown, duration, and ability radius. Now, if you can get the Shock Pulse radius implant, absolutely use it. It is one of the rarest implants in the game. I don't have it. It's been like 2+ years now, and I've still never gotten it. Ability duration is really short. Even with a legendary, you're going to get this up less than a single second. So it's much more useful to try to reduce the cooldown as much as possible. So, from a practical standpoint, go with cooldown, but, obviously do the radius if you have it, but most people don't. Orion your options would be cooldown, duration, Hunter's Mark stasis, and the Shield Pierce implants. Now, stasis implants are never worthwhile. I don't think there's a single one that's ever worth using, so increasing stasis time is just kind of pointless. I wouldn't bother with it. The Shield Pierce is interesting. It does allow for some very interesting benefits against what arguably would be your strongest opponents. However, a Hunter's Mark just in general is enough to cripple basically anything. It's very rare that anything survives it. So I would call Shield Pierce implant more of a niched situation over anything else, quite honestly. And between cooldown and duration, I think most things are going to die before the duration is up. So getting the cooldown as low as possible so that you can continue to fire it out, especially since the Mark transfer is very bugged and just doesn't transfer about 60% of the time. I would say it is definitely worth trying to lower the cooldown as much as possible. It's worth noting, ability damage does not help Orion. Anything that boosts weapon damage, you can't use ability damage to further that. You would need a special implant like Stalker or Seeker bonus damage. Moving on to Hemlock, your options are cooldown, duration, and days delay. Now, Hemlock, I believe, is the only mech that has a mech-specific implant that benefits it more than the arbitrary implant does. It has a mech-specific days duration implant that increases the duration of the EMP and the days by 45%. Normally, a legendary increases by 30%, so this is very interesting. Now, in regard to getting an infinite stun or whatever, you can do it in multiple ways. You could use a cooldown implant, you could use a duration implant. It doesn't really matter. It kind of depends on the weapon that you're using, but I treat it a bit like I treat Orion, in that most things probably aren't going to survive the entire duration of what you just threw at them, right? More than likely, you're going to hit them with something, or your teammates are going to hit them with something, and they'll be dead, or they'll be, unstuck long before the duration is over. So I would honestly just go with cooldown over anything else. The days delay is very interesting. I haven't had a lot of chance to use it myself, but I don't believe that it'll be particularly useful. All things considered, I think cooldown is probably going to still be your best option. Next up is Brickhouse. Implant options are cooldown, duration, overcharger damage, and overcharger radius. Now the radius, same as MD, is 10 meters, and I believe it has the same implant stats and implant rarity as MD, which only gets you to about 12, maybe 13 meters. And so that's not even remotely worth doing. The most obvious and most beneficial one is, as you might guess, the overcharger damage. That is, like the Stalker and Seeker ones that I mentioned earlier, it is a mech-specific implant that pretty significantly boosts the damage from your ability. It'll take your mech bonus damage from 50 to 80, and your team bonus damage from 100 to 130. So it's a massive, massive boost, not just for teammates, but also for yourself. You're making you a lot more effective solo, without teammates when you use the ability, which is, more often the situation that you find yourself in. Now, if you don't happen to have this implant, then the one that I would go for is cooldown over duration. Even if you have, heavy sustained fire weapons, like minigun or something that can last, double this time. You can be firing for 20 seconds with minigun, so it can last double that time. I still don't think that it's worth increasing the duration very much. Brickhouse is very slow. It's a much better idea to do a little bit of ambush, or at least as much ambush as a 14 kph mech can get. And so having the ability back as soon as possible is very beneficial. Plus, it's once again kind of an Orion situation where there aren't very many things that are going to take longer than 10 seconds to kill, while you have a 50% or so extra amount of damage. Last up, we have Solus. Now the implant options for Solus are cooldown, duration, and radius. The general radius is 15 meters. You can get 50% extra with the legendary implant. That's like 22 meters, something like that, which is pretty nice. I would say that that is probably worth going for if you have it. Otherwise, the cooldown is probably the better option over the duration. And duration's the same as Zephyr. It's what I said before. You know, best case scenario, you get this to just under 4 seconds, which is still not a huge benefit, all things considered. So probably worth getting the cooldown as far down as possible. But it does kind of depend on the weapon. I'd say Solus is one of the most adaptive mechs in that respect, where the implants that you might want to use are very different depending on the weapons that you might want to use, and also kind of depending on the general situation. So pretty hard to narrow it down to one implant that you definitely, always want, but I would say it's probably between cooldown and radius. So yeah, that would be it for the support category and for the last of the mechs for this series just in general. Let me know which of these mechs you use on the regular, if you use any of them, and what implants you use on it. Otherwise, that will be it for me. Appreciate y'all. Take care.